Because if you're being paid to do something that is arguably good, you're not a hero, you're a hireling.
You are listening to And If Love Remains, a unique show spotlighting people, ideas, science, culture, and art. Your host, Mike Lovett.
Yes, Rachel, you are listening to that podcast in the sky, And If Love Remains. I am your lovely host, Mike Lovett, and I have with me today the Demosthenes of America.
I wish. That'd be so awesome.
Joe Wolverton. Also have a good friend of mine, Jim Chansu here. Hi, Jim.
How you doing?
And we're going to talk some Cato's letters. Is that right, my man?
Yes, sir.
Let's do this thing.
All right, so
we're going to talk about number 93, which is a powerhouse.
Yeah, so pause the podcast and get out your, I don't know, you want to do it online or you want to have, if you have the physical book, which I would encourage all of you. Man, I mean, it's for both volumes of Cato's letters. It's, $24 at Liberty Fund. Please go do that. Go show these is a small business, really good people, support the cause of liberty. So go over to Liberty Fund. And if you look me up on Instagram, and if you hit me up on Instagram because you heard the podcast, I'll give you a discount code to use over there. But that's only if you hear us through the podcast. So,
wow, yes. So make sure that you both listen to the podcast, which you are, because you.
Otherwise, you wouldn't. Yeah, exactly.
And but check Joey out on his Instagram page. What's your name?
It's just Joe Wolverton, JD, I think is something like that.
JD-ish, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. You'll see me when you click on it. See me.
He's friends with me, so you can look up music by Mike Lovett, and you'll see that there too. But yeah, so that's great. We'll get a discount on that, and yeah, these letters obviously they can be found online, so read them no matter what. But if there's a way that we can, continue to get hard copies out into the communities, I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, provided you got to actually read them, and that's one thing that I found when I introduce people to these. They get really fired up because there's a lot to be fired up about. Problem is, you've got to not only get fired up, you've got to follow through, which is more difficult, And I will say that reading Trenchard and Gordon is a much easier task than reading Sidney or Milton or some of the other guys that you might read, these heroes of Republican government. I would posit that reading Trenchard and Gordon is probably your easiest read of this kind of literature. And so, get out there. You can get them on the Liberty Fund's online library of Liberty, and they have them all on there for free, hyperlinked, and you can download them as PDF, and so that's what I do. I have the actual copies, the hard copies, but then I also have them on PDF, and I upload them to my Notability so I can mark them up all kinds of ways because my books are thrashed by now, and so it's nice. It's nice to have that, and you can. Instead of carrying around your books, you can carry around your iPhone and have, Cato's letters right there in your pocket.
Have the greatest trumpet of liberty that you can have. And this is a powerful essay. First of all, one of the things I noticed, and maybe you can speak to this before we get into the substance of it, Gordon has a much different voice than Trenchard.
Yep, that's right. Gordon was 34 years younger than Trenchard. So Trenchard started out doing, he earned a name for himself, a reputation. He wrote like the Independent Whig, eventually with Gordon, Gordon started off as his secretary, basically. And so Gordon's style, like you might imagine, as a younger man, Gordon tends to be a bit more fiery, right? Oh, you're fine. Gordon is a bit more fiery than Trenchard, but his style is less, how would you say, less philosophical and to me more practical, whereas Trenchard likes to lay out, this more philosophical approach. His tack is very philosophical, whereas Gordon is like, let's shoot them all and let God sort them out.
Which is kind of what he says in 93.
Is exactly what he says.
So let's get into this thing, and the first paragraph when you first open this thing up and it starts talking about so it's an essay upon heroes. Sorry, I gotta take off my glasses. I'm old like Trenchard apparently. And so he's talking about the people who have reformed communities, taught laws, and punished those who violated the laws. And then he says, and I love this little, it's, it was clearly the point, but it's also like as almost a side note. And the greatest of all these public robbers and monsters, tyrants. And it was the heroes that made sure that the tyrants were taken care of as they should.
Right. That was their, one of the things for which they earned this reputation. And I like how he opens it with sort of a checklist. I would, whenever I've taught this, when I teach it in a class and people are taking notes or whatever, I'm like, you can use this as a sort of inventory for yourself, right? To see, am I a hero? Am I, on the trajectory toward heroic deeds? And you can say, are you brave? Do you demonstrate courage, bravery? Are you disinterested? That is to say, are you above flattery? Are you above being bought, right? Are you above being manipulated? So you're disinterested. You just want the truth to be done regardless of the font from which it flows, right? You just want it done. Whether it benefits you or not is immaterial. That you go about doing good, prowess. That's a big one, prowess. Prowess is something that I think is overlooked, but shouldn't be. It's one of those things that to be heroic in this sense, you need some sort of skills. It's like people sleep on that. But I think they shouldn't. It's sort of like how people sleep on the whole, Second Amendment, and everybody likes to crow about the right to keep and bear arms, but it's the right to keep and bear arms as attached to, it is the security of a free society depends on a militia that is well regulated. And this is connected in spirit to this word prowess. You have got a well-regulated militia is a militia that trains together, that learns how to perform procedures necessary, maneuvers that are necessary, right? That's well regulated. So if you want to be a heroic person of the sense that Gordon is talking about, you have to have prowess. What do you have skill at? Can you make knives? Are you a marksman? Are you a pilot? Find something that you can offer that could accomplish the things that you mentioned.
Well,
right?
I think first and foremost, are you able to take care of yourself? You can't take care of others before you can take care of yourself. Jim has taught self-defense for many years, and just the ability to be able to defend oneself in the situation, gives you confidence. And then you take that a step further, being able to, use a firearm, being able to, protect those that are in need, and be able to enter any situation with confidence. That's a big part of that prowess that you're talking about. Right.
It's something like Plato talks about when he says, don't look for people. If something happens to the ship's captain, don't look to replace him just by anyone on the ship. Why is it that people who claim to have, boy, when it all comes down, I'm going to be the last man in the last foxhole, right? Why would we look to someone who's never done anything to prepare for that, to lead us in that moment,
And if you compare that to our leaders today,
Right.
President Biden has never had a job in his life.
Well, how many of them have?
Very few. And if they do have jobs, they're law jobs in large corporations that are funded by government, and they end up in institutions and in think tanks, and then they end up in government, or vice versa, or media. It's never anything that's real, anything that can put food on the table, that's real in a true way. It's all this like theoretical stuff.
Yeah, owning 1,000.
And this is a musician talking, so
right. Owning 1,000 guns and not being a marksman makes you worse than useless. It makes you dangerous to those around you, right? So prowess. The next thing he says, they go about doing good. Do you do that? At your own expense and danger. Do you do good because you're being paid to do good? Because if you're being paid to do something that is arguably good, you're not a hero, you're a hireling. I don't care how grand people like to stick labels on you. I don't care if you get a cool little uniform and a gun and a badge and a nifty Dodge Charger. I don't care if you get discounts all over. I don't care. If you're getting paid to put yourself in harm's way, you're not a hero, you're a hireling. Period. And this is the thing that makes 93 so offensive to so many people who claim to understand the Founding Fathers and do not. If you think the Founding Fathers would support a professional police force who are kids who, some of them, not exactly your finest, right? Not only that they would allow the government to steal their money, to pay salaries of a person they don't know, to ostensibly defend their family, then you need to take time away from this podcast and go read the words of the Founding Fathers, because not a one of them would support that concept. And there was no concept of that until the 1850s in America.
And I've heard you say, like, if what would surprise the Founding Fathers most about our world today? And I think you said the two things were that we have a government education system and that we have a government police force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's some sort of disconnect so grand that I couldn't imagine, but I see it every day, right? You see the guy with the "I back the blue" and "Don't tread on me" stickers right next to each other. Right. Every time I see "Don't back the blue" in my mind, I think red coat lives matter, right? That's what I see in my mind. It's like, why are you supporting this? That, how can you have "Don't tread on me" and I support the people who are going to tread on me?
I think that one of the things that I've come to the realization of, and I'm going to put it in my own words, is that the police and the army, the soldiers, the military, they are being paid by the state, and therefore they are loyal to the state, and they will protect the state. And if you happen to get in the way of that protection, good on you. You have that protection because it served their needs for you to have that protection. But the second that you no longer have that it doesn't suit their needs for you to be protected as a citizen, there's nothing that will stop them. And we've seen countless times that has happened, where it's just turned and the citizenry no longer has the protection of the police, or right. because their number one concern is that of their employer, the government, the state.
Right. And keeping their income, because they ain't fixing to go to college, if you know what I mean. So you do dangerous things at your own expense, right? Those are things, live patterns of virtue and useful valor. Make a list for yourself, Mike. Anybody listening, particularly, I would say, younger men, right? If you're a young man, this should be the sort of thing that you write down in your commonplace book, that you take a note in your iPhone, and that you remember to rehearse to yourself. Be brave, be disinterested, be courageous, have prowess, Go about doing good at your own expense and danger. Live a life of virtue and useful valor. Do those things. And if you do, Gordon says, then you will be superior to other men and akin to the gods. Right? That's the sort of thing.
That's a nice accomplishment.
Right. And so that's the sort of, I love how he opens it, because it really does give you a very clear lens through which to observe heroism. That's a word that today has lost its meaning, because everyone is a hero. And philosophically, Mike, which, through your study of philosophy, I'm sure you know, if everyone is a hero, that means no one is a hero. Right. And maybe that's where we are today, because you have even conservatives who scoff at the idea of a citizen militia because they sleep on the first half of the Second Amendment. We'd still have the Queen on our money if it wasn't for the militia. And someday we may have, who knows, face on our money because we don't have a militia, and we don't have any men, very few, who would be willing to be this kind of man, to put in the sacrifice that it takes to be this kind of man. And I aim that at young people, because you're able to make of your life what you want to make of it. And, a hero dies but once, right? As Shakespeare said. A coward dies 1,000 times.
1,000 times.
Right.
Yeah. And there's such and he goes right here into the next paragraph. And I don't mean to jump.
No, go. No, you go.
I think he goes right ahead and talks about kind of the funny house version of a hero. Like, how does those things get twisted? Because of the nature and ambition of man. We can.
Well, I think it's really illuminating, Mike, when he talks about that. So wild is the nature of man, so impudent, disrespectful. That whereas the primitive heroes were the bulwarks of society, they're what kept society afloat, and the preservers of men. Now think about that. Those who pretended to succeed them were the disturbers of society and the destroyers of men. And such tyrants and monsters as the old heroes had destroyed, they did themselves impudently set up for heroes. I mean, think about that. These people that we call heroes today, how many of the people that we stick this label on, hero, are people that disturb society, people that destroy men, people that do not
chase down monsters?
Yeah, people that do not live lives of virtue. Right? Talk about courage and prowess. You saw at that school where the cops are hanging out letting kids get mown down.
Yeah.
Dude, not only are you a hireling, but you're a wussy hireling. Like, that's worse than being a hireling. You're now a cowardly hireling, which is worse. And these are the sort of men that the old heroes would have destroyed those people for being disturbers and destroyers. But today, we give them discounts at stores.
And those same people were, as parents, are trying to, in their own way, be heroes to their kids and go save their kids. They were stopping them, saying, "No, you can't go in."
Yeah.
That
you're going to put a bullet in my head.
Such an embarrassing. That really, I think, made a point of where we are today, of where yeah.
I dare a policeman to roll up on Sam. Go sing it, man. Let it out. You're the musician, man. Let it go. I need a hero.
Right.
Let's all sing hero songs. It's like Pitch Perfect. All of a sudden, it's like, what do they call it? The riff off? The riff off. Songs about heroes.
Ready, go.
I think I've reached my limit, I think. Hero. Oh, no. I have to think about it.
Yeah.
Hero.
There's probably some anime song.
I don't know any anime songs, man. But yeah, I mean, can you imagine some cop running up on Samuel Adams, and maybe Samuel Adams' neighbor, had a warrant out, and a cop picks the wrong house, flash bangs Samuel Adams' house, and Samuel Adams being, oh, you're a policeman? Oh, never mind then. Sorry, you were just doing your job, officer. Thank you for your service. He'd be like, give me that musket. We're going to handle business.
No, he absolutely. And how do we know that? Well,
because he bloody well did that.
Right. I mean, these people. This is where if we want to be free, if we want to have real liberty, we have to live and at least have the attitude that the founders had, and that means not putting up with people who want to steal your money, people who want to enter your home, without consent, people who want to. I was studying for a project I'm working on, songs from the Revolution, and there's one that the British would sing, and I wish I'll have to pull it up, but in it talks about like, miss, you think it's okay that you don't like the fact there's 4 of us in your house? So how would you like if there were 6? How would you like it if there were 12? I mean, that's a song that the British were singing, like,
But that's the impudence that he's talking about.
Yeah.
These wannabe heroes. That's the impudence, right? You saw the other day that video. You had a guy who pierced his own son's ear, and son was telling someone about it. Neighbor called the police. 6 cops arrest him for endangering the life of a child because he pierced his own son's ear. 6 policemen dragging him out of his house.
Wow.
They would have been dragging all of us out of the house in bags. There's no damn way. And this is the thing we're losing. The courage of, are you a hero or am I a hero? Are either one of us heroes? How do we determine that?
And this goes back to the same, part of the same conversation that we've had in these. And one of the themes I would say is the fear of the sword of Damocles. Like when the authorities, in whatever position they're in, whether it's the police, whether it's governors, whether it's presidents, if they don't feel the fear of, oh man, if I enter the wrong house without a warrant, that could be trouble for me. There has to, maybe it's not worth going in, to try to find some drugs on somebody. Maybe it's worth to make sure that you wait till the guy comes out, or, you know what I mean? Like there is no, there has to be some fear that there's real consequences, and that the peoples that stand up for themselves don't have a fear of retaliation. Mm-hmm. We don't live in that society. I mean, there's constant fear of retaliation.
Well, exactly. And open, if you talk back to me, I'm taking you to jail. Oh, yeah. I am the law.
And it could be small things. Yeah. Anybody can look up on YouTube, First Amendment auditors and things like that, where maybe they've flipped off a police officer, or they've said a nasty thing to a police officer, and the next thing you know, they're in handcuffs. Like, wait a sec. Like, you could say that's bad taste. You could say
there's lots of things. Yeah, it's rude. It's lots of things. What you
can't say is that it's unlawful.
Unlawful. Yeah. He goes on, and I love that he says that, this superstition has destroyed religion. I love how he says that, and that has usurped the place of religion. In my family, we say culture has trumped commandment. Right? Yeah. This superstition, this way we've negotiated with the gospel to make it palatable and comfortable for me, I redefine as the gospel. But it isn't. Right? But whatever way I want to ameliorate
So is he saying here then, because we're putting the authority in government, that the authority of the church, the authority of religion, the authority of the gospel is lessened and is usurped?
Well, he's just making an analogy to saying this superstition that has replaced religion, tyranny has replaced government. And just like superstition now calls itself religion, tyrants call themselves government, but they are not. By very definition, we do not have a government now, right? And if you think of the word govern and tyrant, think of the etymology of those two words. So tyrant is an Etruscan word meaning mistress. Now you can think about this, because what does a mistress do? She takes to herself a privilege that rightly belongs to another, to a wife.
Right.
Okay, that's tyrannos in Etruscan. Government is kaibernon, which means to steer a ship. Right? If I get on a boat and the captain passes out, and I don't become a captain by grabbing the wheel and turning it.
Right.
I'm just a guy trying to steer a boat. I'm not a captain. So you've got people in government. Government exists to steer the ship and for the benefit of those on board the ship. And for no other reason. He does not get to decide. The captain of the boat, I know I'm supposed to take you guys to Cabo, but guess what? I know a much better place. I know you guys paid a lot of money, but I'm going to take you to this other. No, you're a hireling, sir.
Right.
You have skill, and you're going to take us to where, because this is for us. We've decided we want to go to that place, regardless of your opinion, regardless of anything. And so you're not, and Montesquieu, said it best. He's like, a magistrate isn't a magistrate if he exceeds the authority of the magistrate. He becomes a common thief and deserves to be treated as such. You're not a president, a congressman, or whatever, a governor. You're only that insofar as you remain inside the boundaries of your lawful authority.
Right.
Right? You are not a governor if you are not steering the ship for the benefit of those on board the ship, right? As they define it, right? The Declaration of Independence. Who gets to decide? Everybody. Each society gets to decide. You want to be a monarchy? Knock yourselves out. You want to be an oligarchy? The Declaration of Independence could support any of those governments, because he says it's the government that the people themselves believe to be their best hope for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And it's the right of the people, once their association with said government, doesn't serve them, it's their duty to pull away. We've said this before. It's their duty to dissolve that government and start anew.
Right. Once they stop protecting and preserving, once they stop doing that and they start disturbing and destroying, then they're no longer government. They are tyrants, and against which every man is a soldier. As Hugo Grotius said, they are the enemies of mankind and should be hunted down and treated accordingly, because they are diminishing you. They are diminishing your divinity. They are diminishing all of your natural right to rule over yourself. God did not create a society. He created a family.
Right. And I think it comes down to and we're going to get deeper into this, I know, and there's so much that can be said, but it also becomes like a practical matter of okay, we understand this principle, so how do we apply that in our lives? And what steps are we willing to take?
Well, we'll get there, certainly. But this next part, it's really important. With so much safety and even applause, is mischief committed when it has but a good name. Man, you stick a good name on something, a convincing name, and people will not only do it, they will applaud it. They will think it's, like we talked about when we fought against the Pledge of Allegiance bill.
Yeah.
Conservatives are just like apoplectic that someone could oppose that. And I call it a pledge of allegiance, and I say the word republic in it, and I say the word, under God, it must be a good, you stick the right word on something and people will applaud the mischief.
Even the word
regardless,
safety, especially the word safety.
Regardless, yeah, right. It's the Patriot Act.
Right. Yeah.
It's the Restrict Act. We're keeping China from getting our data. Why? Because you don't like the competition? Right. To me, it makes more sense that the Chinese want to hack my phone than that the NSA. The Constitution doesn't govern bloody China. I don't care what they do. But the Constitution does define the authority of the executive branch. Right? Yeah, I don't care if China takes on. I assume they would try. For what reason, I don't know. But I also don't care. Because to me, they're not blaspheming. Every one of those congressmen and that president, all of them swore an oath. And all of them add the little coda, so help me God.
Right.
With their hand on a Bible or whatnot. Making God a witness of their blasphemy because they already promised to break the oath.
And to your point about China, I want to mention, because what happens is then in China, or name your favorite, terrorist organization or group or country out there becomes
the federal government.
Well, I was going to say, the federal government turns them into the enemy. They're far away. They could be an enemy. They very well could, but they're far away. Where we have an immediate threat, an immediate enemy, 1,000 miles from our house that somehow is able to touch our lives in every way and make every decision for us.
Well, somehow the somehow is known.
Yeah.
Because
without it.
Right. We don't care.
And we're much, and this is just a human nature thing. We're much happier to think about an enemy that's far away and to protect ourselves from that and allow somebody to walk over all of our rights to protect us from a faraway enemy than to see that the protectors have become our enemy. Right.
And we comfort ourselves by saying, well, when that day comes, I'm going to stand up to the tyrant and I'm going to do my thing. It's much easier to do that than to say, okay, today I'm a, 16, 17-year-old young man. I'm going to start living a life of a hero as defined by my heroes, right? If you look up to the founding fathers, then you should look to those that they looked up to.
Right. Becoming a hero is a process. It's not a,
right. But you could start working on it, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so, I think, just so as not to belabor it, we can keep going here because it gets really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even touched it yet. So Alexander, talking about Alexander the Great, deified himself, made himself a god. And Caesar, talking about Julius Caesar, was deified by others for being universal murderers. And Cook, I know it's spelled Coke, but it's pronounced Cook. Cook of Bury was hanged for attempting one murder. Had he been at the head of 100,000 cutthroats and murdered 1 million, he might have been recorded a hero. His name handed down to after ages with eulogiums and public declamations made in the schools upon his conduct and virtue.
See, I love that. I love that so much because it's not the name hero. It's not being called the great that makes one great. Because anybody that's called the great or most of the people that we call heroes are really murderers and tyrants.
Alexander and Caesar, they murdered, but why were they not held accountable?
Because people didn't stand up to them.
Right, but because they did what? They stuck a name. Conquest, Pan-Hellenism, Pax Romana. They stuck these words. Patriotism. These barbarians need to be put in their place. These whatever. They stuck these names. So they get back. We defeated the enemy. Who was our enemy? The Gauls. What were they doing again? Absolutely nothing. But I just killed 1 million of them. All for you, Rome. Because he comes into Rome, right? Everybody, oh my gosh, sends letters home about how he's making Rome safe. And that sounds awesome. Alexander, I'm spreading the glory of Hellenism around the world.
Right.
I'm conquering
Bringing democracy to the world.
Yeah. But you got one guy who murders one person. He's hanged as a murderer. These guys are called statesmen and heroes. So if you're going to murder one, murder a million, man. If you really have this desire to murder, run for politics, start some wars.
And yeah.
But of course nowadays you won't exactly get involved in them other than to,
because as he said, so
to support them.
Words in world abuse and so much safety, even applause, is mischief committed when it has a good name. So we're not going to call ourselves murderers. We're going to call ourselves the great. We're going to call ourselves conquerors.
No, but also, why are you doing it, Mike? Patriotism. Yeah. I'm doing this because if we don't take the war to them, Mike, they're going to bring it here. Bull crap.
Which, by the way, I used to believe that.
So did I, man.
I used to believe that. I used to think, oh yeah, better have it happen there than here. But the more I've looked into it, the more I realize, like, that's not what happened.
I'm getting rid of the bad guys by killing these terrorists with flying robots. That's what the terrorists do. So to beat the terrorists, we become terrorists? What happened to... I've read the Constitution. I know you've read it. It says, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. Not no American person, not no good person, no person. Because guess what? You're not a criminal until you're charged with a crime, allowed to answer those charges, and had the merits of those charges decided by an impartial tribunal. You're not a bad guy until that happens in America and England. I don't know what they do in Pakistan. Don't give a damn. Don't care. Right? You could be found guilty, guilty until proven innocent. I don't care.
But that seems to be a universal Western thought. In other words, like, why have the Nuremberg trials? Well, the reason why you have the Nuremberg trials is because they need to account. They have to be put on trial and account for the deeds that happened.
Right, but we don't do that.
Right.
We've brought so many of those terrorists that have held trials and are now at Supermax, right, in Colorado, in Supermax prison. We could do that. But instead, it's like, it makes the sheep among us, the timid among us, feel good that someone else is getting his hands bloody on our behalf. I'm making the world safe for democracy. I'm standing up for America's allies.
You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
Right. We're flying robots. We're killing guys. That's what they do. That's what they do to us.
Yeah.
Right. But once again, going back to this definition, if I do it and I'm an American, that's heroic. Mike, if there was an enemy of the Pakistani state living in Queen Creek and the sovereign state of Pakistan sent a flying robot over here and blew up his neighborhood, Pakistan would be flattened.
Right.
But because it's America and because he's a bad guy, we can do it to them. Well, this is the thing, Mike.
That's because there's no principle. It's all about arms. It's all about who's the powerful.
Because we're right. We're the shining city on a hill. We are right. If we're doing it, we're defending democracy. And we're putting away bad guys. I'm putting my life in harm's way to keep the streets safe. Are they? If I hired 1 million more police officers in Queen Creek tonight, would there, let's not say Queen Creek because heaven knows nothing happens here. Let's go Chicago. If I put 1 million cops on the streets of Chicago tomorrow, would Chicago be safer the next day?
No.
Not at all.
Be a lot more dangerous.
Right. It would not be any safer. And anyone who's studied things knows that. Right? So you look and you say, it's just words.
So we have to, let's just say, why would it not be safer? It wouldn't be safer because you have 1 million more thugs, 1 million more government paid employees that are there to protect the state.
Right. And you have, to many of those people, that uniform represents oppression. Whether you're a good guy or not is immaterial, right, to that situation. And you're not going to put yourself, when you're there, you're collecting your paycheck, right? You want to do all those things. You're not going to voluntarily put, and even if you did, it still would be heroic because you're getting paid for it.
Right. And that's true. You're a hireling, but let's say you were trying to do good. The point is the net, there is no net good.
No, there wouldn't be. And the opportunity for corruption would just spike as well.
Right.
Because to someone like a cartel with the money, when you're looking at, like the Medellin cartel had more cash on hand than GM in the 80s. Well, to them, that just says, okay, we got to spread some more money around.
Well, it's not just that. It's now I can pinpoint where to put the money.
Right. I don't have to guess.
Right.
Yeah.
I know who to bribe. And
so just have it be it the right thing.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is the other really dangerous aspect of not living by principles is then it gets turned on us. In other words, now you have an Edward Snowden who is, who's cannot return to his home. You have Julian Assange who will not be pardoned. You have that's just rotting in jail and will probably die there. Mm-hmm. You have people that have not gone to trial for January 6th, and you could say that's right or wrong.
Julian Assange didn't kill anyone.
No, he didn't.
George Bush ordered the killing of thousands. And this is what he's saying. George Bush was president of the United States. He was fighting the bad guys.
Right.
So he's a hero.
And Julian Assange is a bad guy.
Julian Assange is rotting in jail.
Because what did he do? He exposed
the corruption.
Right. That's right. And now we have an NSA that has too much money and too much manpower that is now looking at American citizens and is spying on us as much as anybody else.
And once again, the applause, right? Do you know how conservatives would act if it was announced that we were going to arrest George W. Bush for war crimes?
Well, we know how, because people would say it, and it would, and
you liberal, you a communist,
right?
No, I read the Constitution.
There it is.
I'm not a communist at all. I'm in favor of free market, but I'm also in favor of, if you order the murder of people, then you ought to be held accountable, whether your name is Alexander the Great or Cook of Berry.
Yeah. You got to have the same.
Or Child the highwayman robbed the mail and was put to death. But if he'd robbed a nation, he would have governed it.
Right.
Instead of hanging in chains, he would have led a whole people in chains and been dubbed an able statesman and a faithful minister.
There's something sick about human nature about that. And I don't know if it's our need for security. I mean, I don't know what that is that says, hey, this guy is the guy that I want to be my ruler. The guy who has just robbed an entire country. The Philip of Macedonia, why would you give into that? Why wouldn't you fight him?
Because he's a slick talking veteran. How many of our leaders have been slick talking veterans?
A lot of them.
There you go. Well, I mean, that's the way, because we applaud that. He's a hero. He put himself in harm's way for Greece. What?
He did it for his own.
He did it to enrich himself. But all right, so so much of this, man. When you go down to the next paragraph, and he's talking about, what is it? Mischief is inseparable from the profession of the present hero, whose business and ambition it is to multiply conquests and consequently miseries upon those whom he conquers. What a wild and inhuman spirit to plague the world in order to make a figure in it, to commit great villainies for a good name, to destroy the peace and prosperity of mankind, to gain their esteem, and to shed their blood to show themselves fit to govern them. I mean, they brag about, I'm going to get every member of Al-Qaeda, and I'm going to take care of all of them. We're going to use the shock and awe. They brag about it.
Right.
Before, if you elect me, I'm going to put these people in their place. I am going to rid the world of this menace. But it's like, Ron Paul always said, they don't hate us for our freedom. They hate us because you blew up their wedding and killed 50 people who don't care at all about the United States. They don't hate you for your freedom, idiot. They hate you because you're murderers. Because when they go back to collect the bodies of their loved ones, the little piece of shrapnel have the words United States of America written on them. That's why they hate you, dude. It's called blowback.
Yeah.
I may not like the way my neighbor runs his house. I may not like his politics. I may not like literally anything about him, but I can coexist with him. But guess what? If I go over there and start making a scene about how I don't like his politics and I start vandalizing his house and he comes over and kills me, did he hate me for my better values and better? No.
Well, and I think, and let's turn it a little bit, and let's say your neighbor, blows up one of your buildings and kills 500 of your family members. Does that give you the right to go and kill 50,000 of his, or should you not bring him to justice?
Well, even if you assume that you would have that right, which is fine, assume you have that right. I don't care. There may be something to that, but my point is, what would be the reason for the killing? The reason for the killing is the murders committed, not because they're jealous of you.
Right.
But dude, it's blowback. It's simple vengeance. For every one suspected bad guy, you militarize 3 of them. Because they're like, that guy, I know him, he did nothing. This is the way they're going to act. Then we're going to strike back. But again, if you're the president of the United States, they used to have their kill list meetings every Thursday.
Well, the cards, the
right.
deck of cards.
I interviewed a guy, Mike, who was a drone operator from Nevada, operating drones in the Middle East. And he killed himself. 24 years old, killed himself because he finally realized what he was doing. And it drove him insane. Now, I obviously interviewed him before that. I wanted to know, what his life was like they go in this tiny little hut. They're not allowed to have smartphones, not allowed to read the paper, nothing like that. And they just get a clipboard, coordinates. And then him and another guy, they coordinate. This is the coordinate. Are you there? Do you see anything? Light it up. And then they would fly back around to make sure it was blown up. They would mark it off down to the next one.
Yeah.
That's not American, man. We go not abroad in search of monsters to destroy. We're the well-wishers of everybody's freedom, but the vindicator of only our own. Right? But all you got to do is stick a title on it. Patriotism, revenge, president, Congress, democracy.
Yeah, and I think now is the time. I mean, we're past time in a lot of ways, but I think for many, like now is a time that we can, and I'm going to use a religious word here, but that I've had to look at myself and my thinking, and I think a lot of people need to look at themselves and just the way they think and repent, change, think about this stuff in a new way. read this stuff and see how does it apply to today. Because, I struggle to not be a hypocrite and saying like, that wasn't me 10 years ago, 5 years, like,
no, same. Yeah.
And so like, and now it's like, it breaks my heart to think about like, the soldiers that I know who I was totally in favor of them going to war and not just messing up the lives of the people over there, but messing up their own lives. Like you were talking about the drone pilot, I can't imagine what those people saw and went through. And I was fully on board with it. And it's hard to like come to that realization, it's hard to go, oh my gosh, what was I advocating for? Am I advocating for peace and security, or am I advocating for vengeance?
Well, what are those troops, the American troops that Biden sent the other day to Africa? What are they doing there? What are they doing there?
That's a good question.
Well, when they kill the people those are the ones you kill those guys. When they kill them, are we going to be safer here? Are we going to have better lives, more liberty, greater prosperity? No. But Joe Biden doesn't care because he is not over there. It's like he says, he not only kills other people, he throws away the lives of his own soldiers.
Right.
I mean, just to glut a restless tyrant and his instruments, men and nations must be slaughtered or enslaved. That's the way you get glory from these pretend heroes. Such is the difference between the old original heroes and these, they're apes. And then use this as a checklist for our government, who by fraud, violence, perjury, restless cruelty make war upon their subjects and neighbors, and by sacrificing the virtuous and the brave, or by making them their instruments to sacrifice others, and by distressing, exhausting, plundering, and chaining all, push human misery as far as it can go. That's what they do. That's what you do.
Yeah.
That's how you gain. You promise to be, I'm going to kill more of those brown people than my opponent. She's soft on brown guys. I will kill him. That's what you do. But we don't care, you see. We don't care. We claim to be a Christian country.
Right.
Okay, go and look on this next presidential campaign. You will see that each of the candidates has a thing, the things I promised to do in my first 100 days. Go through that list. Put a red mark next to everything that the Constitution allows them to do.
Oh, it'd be zero.
None. Then tune in, Mr. Christian. Tune in to the inauguration when that guy who's already promised you to violate the Constitution, but he's your favorite tyrant. Pew. I got the right letter after my name, y'all. What's up? So I've promised to violate the Constitution, but now, Christian, you're going to cry and you're going to applaud and you're going to feel so patriotic when he puts his hand on a Bible and says, I swear to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, so help me God. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, he's such a good man. He just blasphemed and you applauded it. Our fathers would have torn him off that stage and shown him a hero. Well, our ancestors.
And they were. That's for sure. They were heroes.
Yeah. I don't know if you're getting tired, but we got to go to the. We got to go to what he suggests they do with them.
Well, and there was one other thing that I
want
that we talked about, which is where is it? I mean, there's so much. Where does he talk about mock heroes? Valor by proxy. Valor by proxy.
Yeah, he does. But what about this one where he's like, an equitable punishment for how bloodthirsty they are?
Yeah.
That's in this paragraph. Perhaps it would be a more equitable punishment if they, these tyrants who, wage wars and kill and destroy their own people and people abroad, if they could be caught, shut up a number of them in a madhouse with their beloved arms about them, there to fight and tear one another's flesh and spill their own detestable blood till they had no more to spill. This would be giving a sort of satisfaction to mankind for so much human blood outrageously and wantonly spilt. Dude, if you don't love Trenchard and Gordon after that, you and me ain't friends, man. If you don't want congressional Hunger Games, me and you ain't friends. Because I want that 7 ways to Sunday. I want everyone who has voted to put troops in these foreign combat situations without a declaration of war in violation of the Constitution. I want all of them locked up Hunger Games style with weapons and say, just go at each other. Yeah. You love war so much. You love shedding blood so much. Have at it, y'all.
And that reminds me of the other part that I wanted to say, which is where he talks about, and I can't remember where it is, but he talks about like not just the people who shed the blood, but the generals, those who stand back.
Oh yeah.
Those who watch the soldiers do their bidding.
Right.
And while the language is beautiful. It's
just the next paragraph. It's the next paragraph. Yeah.
Let's see.
This is not the mock heroism.
This is not one of the mock heroism of this world. There is yet another sort of mischievous, but still more ridiculous, and that is a violent appetite for war and victory and conquest without engaging personally in the danger or coming near it, but being very valorous by proxy. And that's exactly what you were talking about, Jim. And fond of fighting without drawing a sword. This was the prudent bravery of a late-aged conqueror who has never tired of war, yet has never tired of his own person in it. In the heat of a battle fought for his glory, he ran no risk. And he talks about, but sat securely at a great distance with a wise old woman, his mistress, waiting for laurels of other people's winning. I mean, that just...
Is there any... I mean, if you didn't see in your mind Biden in the White House...
Right.
We're going to straighten out Africa. We're going to straighten out Afghanistan, Pakistan.
Fix those... We're going to fix those Russians.
We're going to make it where the Russians and the Ukraine stop fighting. We're going to stand up for democracy, because Ukraine was a democracy. But we're going to do it not run by oligarchs with mansions in Miami that we paid for. But anywho, that's, don't say that, Joe. They're out there putting themselves in harm's way.
Oh yeah.
I've seen Zelensky. He's out there. He's a hero. No, I love this. They love war, but they're not going to come within a country mile of fighting in it.
Right.
They will sit back at a comfortable distance, sacrificing other people to win glory for them.
Yep.
They never tired of war, but never tired themselves in one.
Oh, what a lucky man he was.
Yeah, it's like he just wants the glory, and he knows that his position enables him to sacrifice others for his own glory.
It's David's great sin, right? It's putting other people out there to cover up for your sins and to gain glory for you.
They slaughter thousands who obey them and undo millions who ought not to obey them, and all to enslave others. others who neither wish to do them harm and with whom they have nothing at all to do. Those people in Djibouti, those people in Afghanistan, they couldn't give a right royal rip about America until you start freaking blowing stuff up.
See, and this is the thing. Like, what should America's role be in the world? And this has been the conclusion that I've come to. I think you'll agree, but tell me if I'm wrong. I think the role, like, we should not be the policemen of the world. We should be a city of light on a hill of freedom that everyone looks to and says, we can do that too. We can take down the tyrants, and we can take down our own tyrants and secure our own liberty. Well, and that's our role.
That's the thing I quoted earlier from the John Quincy Adams speech, In Search of Monsters to Destroy, from 1821, where he says, hey, we're not going to spill blood and treasure to secure your liberty. We're going to do that for ours. We'll pray for you and support you and cheer for you when you make strides toward freedom. But we go not abroad in search of monsters to destroy. We're the vindicator of our own liberty and the well-wisher of yours.
Right.
It reminds me of Tacitus. Did I study Tacitus with your kids?
Yes.
So Tacitus in Germania, written about AD 90, writing about so if you're English or German, these are your ancestors, right? He's writing about the ancient tribes of Germany. And he talks about this tribe called the Chaucians. And when I taught this, the first time I taught this in a brick and mortar high school, man, the kids were running around tagging boards in the school with "Be a Chaucian," because the Chaucians in Tacitus's Tacitus record, Germania, he says, everyone knew that if it came to a fight, they were going to give you a fight, but they were peaceful, they were respectful, they went not out looking for combat, looking for conquest. They were peaceful in their land. They would not suffer others to attack them, but they would not go out seeking neither plunder or conquest. And that's who we could be, man. We could be that. Who's going to fight us?
Yeah,
But a lot of people, individuals are, because we continually irk them. We continually goad them, and it's by design. Right? When there is no domestic enemy, create a foreign one, said James Madison. But Madison got that why. That's exactly what Pisistratus did. These Athenians will not let me rule, will not give me their arms. Well, I'm going to ride outside of town with my boys, cut ourselves up with our own knives, and then ride back into town and say, oh my gosh, there is this foreign foe out there. They're going to attack us if you don't let us be the official army. Give us your weapons, because we don't know who to trust. We don't know who we can. Your neighbor might be one of these people. You got to give. Oh my gosh, seriously? Yes, there's a ton of. Look what they did to us. Oh, here are our weapons. Womp womp womp. Right? It's Al Qaeda. Right. It's not. Who is it? Then it's not Taliban. Oh, okay. Right?
It's the Chinese.
It's the Chinese. In the 80s, it was the Japanese, remember? Anyway, it's somebody. It's always somebody. If you can't find a domestic enemy, create one. Because people are so willing to give up liberty in exchange for this safety this illusory promise of safety.
Right. And I think that's the key. Like, the problem isn't that we have enemies. Of course we have enemies. The problem is that we make them, first of all, we do harm to them that makes them, makes them more enemous, more of an enemy. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, like, we have this false idea that we can be secure. Like, somehow they can't, that we can't, that we can have this like bubble of protection, and you could have a bubble of protection, but at the price of liberty. And liberty is scary. Freedom is scary. And you have to be willing to face down that fear.
Right. I mean, that's the point, though. Existence, a free existence is, a tenuous existence. Yeah. But that's what it is. But you come together and you make rules with people who are like-minded. And when you say we have enemies, I'm like, who's this we, Kimosabi? Because I mean, seriously, yeah, if you continue with this narrative that we are a nation, a word that does not appear in the Constitution, and not a single person in that convention would have stayed there had that been the proposal. But if you continue that narrative, and now we have for 5-6 generations that we're one nation indivisible, when you can like we did, we demonstrated to these Arizona lawmakers that was written by a socialist to support a socialist magazine, that it was supported by the teachers' unions, by the American socialists. They don't care because why? You cannot dissuade someone of lies that they've been convinced are true.
And as you mentioned before, like it's always the first thing that we learn that becomes the truth.
Right. Well, that was Thucydides. That wasn't me, but yeah, Thucydides is like, you can
For
come.
me, it's you.
Okay.
I know. Joe Wolverton,
Thucydides, same kind of deal. But you know, but it's a real thing, Mike. You perpetuate this narrative and it becomes the enemy of this ruling class becomes the enemy of all of us. No, because there is no all of us, Kimosabi.
And that's the truth. The ruling class. And if you think about it, the ruling class is our enemy. So
yeah,
we should be on the side of the Chinese.
Well, I mean, it's like they declared themselves enemies. You know, I remember that
stepping outside the line of the
and
law.
You know, I have a whole document filled with nothing but these men that the founding fathers read who say that they are now nothing but an enemy and the people should hunt them down and treat them accordingly. You know, every man is a soldier against a tyrant. Because why? Because if you let another man usurp that authority to force you to do something, even something ostensibly, nominally good, you are allowing that man to put himself above God, because God will never force you to do something that even that which is truly good. So when he says, thou shalt have no other gods before me, and then you obey a tyrant, you are placing someone above him, right? And when you create this notion that this is my duty as an American, but pump the brakes, man. Don't hide behind the skirts of the founders until you have spent time with the founders. Marinate in that stuff, man. Let it sink deep into you. Keep, marinate in it overnight. Let that stuff sink deep into you. Don't go half caught because you've seen on the internet a Federalist Papers quote.
Right.
I'm telling you, man. I mean, the reason we do this series on the podcast is so there's going to be that young man or young woman who goes and actually reads this and then lo and behold, teaches it to their children or decides to become a true hero. And that's why this stuff will never be taught in school again. Because if we read what our founders read, we might do what our founders did and run the tyrants off at the point of a gun. And you know what I say? Chapter 1 of Tyranny for Dummies, get control of the language. How do you do that? Control education.
Yep.
Teach them purposefully incorrect definitions of words.
Like hero.
Hero, for example.
Or gender.
Or gender. Yep. Right?
I don't know, why am I even bothering to open my mouth at this point? But I did have a question, Joe.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson went to war without declaring war, right? Against the Barbary pirates. There was no declaration of war. Should he have been tried as war criminal?
Sure, if that's what the people wanted to do to him. I mean, none of these guys, and Thomas Jefferson would be first to say it, we shouldn't deify any of them. Now, he argued at the time, if you read, and you probably have, but if you read his letters at the time, No. I mean, I'm sure you have. It's not like it's some kind of esoteric Gnostic library or something, but he explained that he was protecting life and that there was no one against whom to declare war because it was pirates. That was his argument. His argument was, well, who do we declare war against? The pirate. It's not like they have a club, right? You call yourself a pirate one day and not the next. Who do you declare war against, right? If you're declaring war on the pirates, because a declaration of war is essentially a statement to the world that we're pushing pause on international law, right? We're going to say, instead of not killing people, we're going to kill some people. Instead of not taking your stuff, we're going to take some stuff. So you declare that, right? And it has to be just. In the case of the Barbary Pirates, I don't think it was a declaration of war because it would have been impossible. I think given what happened, I think he did the right thing. And one of the main things he did that I think we could use if we really were interested, because he shut that business down. And one thing we could do if we were interested in that sort of thing, if you want to conflate the Barbary Pirates with Al Qaeda, for example, a lot of people have done that. If you want to do that, do what Jefferson did and issue letters of marque and reprisal. Set American civilians, and that's in the Constitution. They can issue letters of marque and reprisal, right? And say to a civilian, we're granting you this specific mission to go in search of this person and bring him back. You're not to be held accountable legally for what happens because we are granting you the imprimatur of the state. You are as if you were the government, but you're a civilian. It's called letters of marque and reprisal. I wrote an article about this about 10 years ago because I think, man, when it's a case of an ill-defined or even undefinable enemy, and we're just talking about individuals, as were the Barbary Pirates. If you're talking about individuals, let's use like Jefferson did, like Madison did in 1812. Let's use the letters of marque and reprisal. Let's get some of these guys, these veterans that were in SEAL teams or Delta Force or whatever. Let's get these guys who say, I could go over there with a pack of smokes and I could have these guys. Let's give them a shot at that. And I think, in the case of Jefferson, personally, I don't think he was a war criminal because I don't think his actions rose to that level. I think he was very surgical in what he did, given the situation. I don't think he ever purposefully took innocent life. I think, in fact, in his missives to Monroe, he specifically says, we need to go as far out from that as possible to keep this localized, to keep this narrowly tailored toward the pirates. So no, I would say no. And I would say for those reasons I just said, but also I would adopt something from that era, and that is the letters of marque and reprisal. And if you guys want to look that up, it's MARQUE, by the way. And if you want to look that up, just Google my name and letters of marque, and I'll go through the whole history of it. And it's really an effective tool, especially in light of piracy and maybe terrorism or things that are ill-defined or undefinable. Use those tools which is a constitutional tool, whereas the president sending, drones to drop missiles on a wedding because the uncle of a bad guy might be at that wedding, that's not constitutional.
Well, it also prevents a standing army. Because you're using civilians and you're saying, okay, it's a very specific task, it's a specific thing, and you can go do this thing. But once that mission is accomplished, stand down. Like you're no longer
right, because you have a very narrowly tailored mission. You are going in search of, just for the sake of discussion, Osama bin Laden. You have 1 year to do it. You can use the following, resources and offer, you can offer money. You could say, they did this in the War for Independence. They did it in the Barbary Pirates. They did it in 1812. Use that. I mean, it's on the table. Whereas, a 20-year undeclared war that decimates a nation is not constitutional because only Congress can declare war. And although I get why politically it's advantageous to push onto the president, because then you could say, look what he did. I never wanted to do that. Right. He did it. Right. And you can hide behind some authorization for the use of military force. Have some Stugats, declare war or not. Right.
Market reprisal is still, obviously it's still the Constitution.
Yeah.
But I thought that there were, in the last 50 or 60 years, laws that basically prevented us from using that.
Well, I don't know what that law would be, unless it was an amendment. It would have to be an amendment to the Constitution.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
It would have to be an amendment to the Constitution, and I
there isn't
don't
one.
For a moment believe
No. And in fact, in 2000...
It's just policy.
Yeah, policy, small. I don't care. If it's not an amendment, that still is in the Constitution. And in fact, Ron Paul made a bill seeking to have letters of marque and reprisal issued. I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2002, when he was in Congress. And he's like, and you can go you can go on YouTube, and he gives a whole, he's like, why don't we use this? Let's use this that we have, because to have abolished that, it would have to be an amendment, and no amendment has ever been ratified that abolishes marque and reprisal.
I know. Interesting. That's cool. All right, let's get to what do we do with tyrants?
Well, I think, we got the Hunger Games.
Hunger Games.
I think that I personally, that's, one of my favorites is the Hunger.
That we want to talk about the another checklist, I think.
Oh, yeah. So if you go down, let me find where my checklist is. Hold on. Now I have to find.
It's great.
Which I was using as my other.
One of the things, as you're looking for that, one of the things I love about these letters is that they are short. I mean, it's probably. You wouldn't know, right?
Right.
I mean, it's probably 1,200 words, 1,500 words, something like that.
Yeah, probably right at 1,500 or so. Yeah,
something that could be read. The language you have to get used to just because it's older, but you could read it in 10 minutes.
Well, and you could read it in 10 minutes, and read it with.
Probably read it in 3.
Read it with a dictionary, man. Some of these things, if you don't know what they are, read it with a dictionary. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, I think we actually already talked about it because I already have it marked off. But
okay.
The differences in what do the tyrants do, and I think we already went over that. They are, valorous by proxy.
Yeah.
The fraud, violence, perjury. We already went over that. The things that set apart a tyrant from a true magistrate, a true, representative, a true political servant, is the fraud, violence, perjury, restless cruelty, make war upon their subjects and neighbors, sacrifice the virtuous and the brave, all of that. We went through that.
And then he goes through and he does give examples, the French, the Swedes, he talks about different examples of where it went wrong.
Well, and he talks about you always have princes are beset with sycophants.
Yeah.
And that's true. I mean, particularly, you have, if I swear, I got so much heat from conservatives when I wrote that article about how when Trump said, seize the weapons now, we'll worry about due process later. When he said, conservatives lost why are you undermining President Trump? Because I'm no respecter of persons. It's the Constitution.
Right.
Every issue, every time, no exceptions.
To be clear, you also supported him on his if I remember right, his impeachment trial. Like you said, this is
right.
False impeachment.
Right. I supported him on that. Supported him on the charges that he's been, laid on him now. Yeah, I support. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of principle is always over party.
Right.
The Constitution always over the personality. Right. Always. And so, but people have their sycophants. If a Republican does it, and there's a whole section in here, a whole letter in here devoted to that when you have parties who come into being, that, what's that?
The one that he was quoting from.
No, there's another Cato's letter where they say, if the one party does it, it's fine, but if the other party does it, it's wrong. Right? And that's the way we live today. And that's pretty much these sycophants. They're ready to applaud no matter what it is, even when they're applauding traitors. Right? What is a traitor? I mean, isn't that someone who commits treason? Well, how would you define treason? I mean, the Constitution defines it, right? It's actually defined in there. And so if you could, why not charge any one of them with treason and see if you can make it stick? Because you're going to have, and why can't we? Because the Republicans are not going, as a rule, not going to vote to charge one of their own with treason.
Right.
Because they know they're committing treason too.
And the Democrats are the same.
No, right, exactly.
This is where it's a uniparty system, because there's a for all the differences in policy, within that narrow spectrum that the parties allow, like they all cover for each other. They all allow each other to get away with completely unconstitutional, completely treasonous acts, because it's all acts against the people.
Right. Well, and against your own oath of office.
Right.
The down he's talking about Telemachus. Telemachus from the Republic, from Plato's Republic, is
him.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sometimes sometimes you're like, yeah, and I'm like, okay, and then I look at you and you're like, side eye.
No, I'm just trying to put in my head the next thing I need to read.
Oh, Plato's Republic. Yeah, Telemachus. But anyway, so he says, he puts it in Telemachus's mouth, but he says, such, and this sounds, James Madison could have written this, such are the heavy evils that follow war. I mean, you think about what has happened in the wake of war in the United States. And not just declared wars, because obviously there hasn't been one since 1941, but think about that. How the country changed after World War I, with income tax, with the Federal Reserve, with the growth of the Army, and think of World War II, with mothers continuing their employment outside the home, right? Vietnam, the sexual revolution, right? Such are the heavy evils that follow wars. What blind fury urges unhappy mortals? So few are the days that they have to live upon this earth, and so miserable do they make those few days. Why will they run headlong into the jaws of death, which is of itself already making hasty approach to devour them? Why add so many frightful desolations to a short and bitter life that is already made so by heaven? Men are all brethren, and yet they tear and butcher one another, more unnaturally fierce and cruel than wild beasts of the desert. Lions don't make war upon lions, tigers not upon tigers. They attack animals of a different species, but man, and man alone, in spite of his reason, does things that those creatures without reason would never do.
You are listening to And If Love Remains.
First of 23 installments requested by Dr. Levitt. We're trying to be in compliance here because we're taking him and that whole organization down.